Kirsty, can you just confirm that you're still seeing the right screen for me?
Yes, yeah, that's still on there.
That's super. Brilliant. Okay, so we are going to make a start. So hello everybody and welcome. We're kind of at the midway point of our multi-agency child exploitation programme of learning this week. And this session you've got me delivering and we're going to be looking at the multi-agency child exploitation programme of learning, the development of the multi-agency child exploitation and contextual safeguarding strategy. So just a run through of what we're going to be looking at for your hour today. We'll aim to get you out at 1 o'clock. So we're going to start off by looking at the journey so far and how the multi-agency child exploitation arrangements have developed in North Yorkshire. We'll spend some time looking at the achievements and highlights from the work of our previous strategy, which ran from 2020 to 2023. And then we'll get into the new strategy, particularly looking at the consultation work that's taken place to develop it, looking at the TCE or Tackling Child Exploitation Practice Principles, and how we've listened to the voice of children, young people and families. We're going to have a little bit of time looking at the new strategy, and I'll take you through each of our 4 priorities for that strategy. And then I'm going to ask you, when we go through each of the priorities, to start to consider what those priorities mean for you and your service and the work that you do. So I will be asking you to put a few comments in the chat at that point. So get yourselves ready after about half an hour or so. And then we'll focus on outcomes and how we're going to kind of measure moving forwards with this strategy and what our next steps are going to be. So to start, I would like to take you on a little journey, looking at some of the history of child exploitation work in North Yorkshire and how we've reached where we are today, really. So if you look at the roadmap infographic on the slide, we start way back in 2011. At this point, North Yorkshire Safeguarding Children's Partnership established a multi-agency child sexual exploitation protocol in September of that year, and developed a strategy to address issues of sexual exploitation countywide. Now, in November 2013, there was a national publication of a report called If Only Someone Had Listened. Now, this report was relating to a national inquiry into the child sexual exploitation in gangs and groups. And this, alongside other national reports into the sexual exploitation scandal in Rotherham, indicated collective failures and identified the need for really proactive approaches. So from here, exploitation has and remains an area of national concern. So as a partnership, in October 2015, we saw the introduction of our VEMPT procedures. For those of you who may remember those, VEMPT stood for Vulnerable, Exploited, Missing and Trafficked. Now, the initial focus of these procedures was primarily on child sexual exploitation cases only. This ensured a timely implementation programme and a platform to build on once the operational practice was effectively established. During 2016 and 17, the VEMPT procedures were reviewed and expanded to include additional vulnerabilities. So we were looking at missing from home, modern slavery and human trafficking, radicalisation and extremism, honour-based violence and female genital mutilation, as well as other forms of exploitation as well. Now, also at this time, there was the development of the North Yorkshire Multi-Agency Screening Team, or the MAST, which we still have today. In August 2018, the partnership established a VEMPT strategic group to review current arrangements and drive a multi-agency response to effective information sharing, identifying and managing risk of exploitation, addressing contextual safeguarding and effectively identifying, targeting and pursuing perpetrators of exploitation. Now, at this time, the group agreed on a relaunch, which took place in June 2019. Where the current multi-agency child exploitation arrangements were launched and replaced VEMPT. So we've got the MACE as we now know it. So coupled with this, we had the launch of the MACE strategy in 2020, alongside the development of a knowledge hub for professionals covering topics related to exploitation. In March 2020, which for me feels like a lifetime ago now, but you know, we're 4 years away from when the COVID pandemic hit, which changed work patterns for everybody, and MACE was no different really. We had significant changes to the multi-agency working arrangements for MACE as meetings were moved to an online virtual platform, and they remain so to this day. In July 2021, the partnership was successful alongside the City of York in being accepted to be part of the Home Office devolved decision-making pilot for the National Referral Mechanism, meaning that decisions regarding whether a young person is a victim of modern slavery and/or trafficking was made with a local multi-agency panel with National Home Office ratification rather than being sent to the Home Office for that decision, meaning decisions made about the children in North Yorkshire are now occurring in a much more timely manner. In June 2022, to support Safeguarding Week, we relaunched the Be Aware Knowledge Hub. This was following a lengthy piece of consultation work with parents and carers and young people to expand the resources with content specifically designed for each demographic, with an additional section for communities and local businesses. At this time, the work of the MACE Task and Finish group also came to fruition with a comprehensive pack encouraging partners to really explore the language that they use when talking about young people and families who have been victims of exploitation, to ensure that the language remains victim focused and really seeing that young person as a victim of abuse. Some more recent developments: in January 2023, work was completed on our cross-partnership enhanced data set. So this enables us to look at MACE strategic patterns and gives us a real clear picture of what exploitation is looking like across North Yorkshire, enabling us to identify emerging themes and trends and share those trends with wider partners. This has led to some additional various work streams and subgroups that have looked at sort of a further understanding around some of that data. In March 2023, we had the positive news from North Yorkshire Police that there was an uplift of a specialist missing and exploitation team across North Yorkshire. And then finally, we're looking at some more recent stuff. So campaign work has been a really big feature of the work of the partnership, and we support yearly national campaigns. So we've got Anti-Slavery Day, we support the Children's Society Look Closer campaign, and of course Child Exploitation Awareness Day, which was on Monday, and why we've got this full programme of events this week. In May last year, we also saw the appointment of the Partnership Child Exploitation and Contextual Safeguarding Officer. So Gemma Orr has been a welcome addition to the team and is now chairing those MACE Level 2 meetings right across North Yorkshire, alongside those NRM panel meetings as well. And in June 2023, we held the first face-to-face MACE development sessions and provided partners with an opportunity to come back together face-to-face for the first time since March 2020, or for some people the first time ever, meeting each other face-to-face, not just a virtual face on a screen. We had great success with the event, with over 150 partners attending right across the county, with some really positive feedback. So we are holding similar events this summer, and we aim to do them annually, which I'll share some details with you later on. And finally, to build on the sessions, feedback from those development sessions and the ask from partners for more sharing of positive practice and the building of networks, the partnership developed and launched the monthly MACE bulletin and partner role directory in September 2023. So that leads us to now, and we continue on this exciting roadmap of our journey into our new MACE strategy. So let's see where this journey will take us. So I thought it would be useful to share, again, looking at kind of that reflection of the journey that we've travelled, the priorities from our previous strategy and the achievements and progress that's been made by partners. So bearing in mind these were our priorities for 2020 to 2023, but priority 1 was to enable partners and communities to work together to protect children and young people. So some of our achievements to kind of reach that priority, there's been a wealth of training delivered right across partnerships. We've delivered to local schools and done a lot of work with DSLs and had teacher briefings. We've delivered training to partners regarding modern slavery and trafficking through Hope for Justice, and we've delivered masterclasses on a variety of topics of exploitation, and of course the learning events this week. We've had the development and launch of the Be Aware Knowledge Hub, with a big push for community engagement in that as well. Exploitation awareness raising campaigns have been a big factor in the development, and we've worked on things like the Exploitation Awareness Day campaign and a particularly large social media presence sharing some of those key messages. And as I've already mentioned, we've done a big piece of work around language, and moving away from that victim blaming language, which you can access on our Be Aware website. We've had continued focus on raising awareness for the community partnership information sharing form, and the online form that's now been updated, and some guidance around that. And we've delivered a lot of training and bulletins to support that. And again, we've had that specialist support for families and young people through our commission services. So we've had the work of the Iverson Trust, who you may have previously known as PACE, and Hand in Hand, who have been delivering from the Children's Society. In terms of priority 2, which was in relation to focusing on the prevention and engagement of children, young people, parents and carers, we've had updates from partners around various tools in terms of engaging and really listening to the voices of young people. An example of which is from Children and Families Service, who are now promoting the use of a Mind of My Own app, which is a really clever app for kind of capturing the voices of young people, all young people, including those who are victims of exploitation, and is used in things like when they're doing return to home interviews. Be aware, again, there was a lot of consultation work with parents and carers and young people, and the new pages were based on information they told us they wanted to know about, and that was what was launched last summer. And also, following some schools' feedback, we linked in with PSHE forums and have now collated lesson plans and school resources to raise awareness of exploitation to children in schools. We're really proud to link in with the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner Youth Forum and their big conversation work, which we will move on to a little bit later on. But again, the strategic group has been linking in over the last several years with how we can kind of link in with the forum and their findings, and put their priorities into our strategic work. We now have a standing MACE operational item which asks partners to share the voices of children and families affected by exploitation, and we use this to pick up on emerging actions, themes, trends and things like that based on their experiences. And again, Iverson Trust is a really strong partner, and they share regularly the work that they're doing with parents. So for example, they shared last year that they'd worked with 58 families, 86% of which had reported an increased understanding of exploitation, and 81% sharing they had that improvement in being able to cope with what was going on. Priority 3. So this was with regards to strengthening multi-agency work in response to children and young people identified as at risk of harm, and targeting and disruption of those persons who pose a risk of harm and locations of concern. So we've done a lot of work in terms of updating guidance in relation to persons who pose a risk of exploitation. We now have a really clear 1-minute guide which shares the processes with partners, and police share really key information through our MACE Level 2 meetings via the perpetrator on a page document, which has those specific asks from partners in relation to gathering intelligence. I've already mentioned we appointed a MACE and contextual safeguarding officer in May last year. So Gemma's role is to chair the MACE Level 2 meetings, and having that consistent chair with oversight over all the areas has really helped us to continue to develop a real kind of county-wide understanding of what's going on and develop those partnership links. We are currently doing some work with adult services to look at developing a task and finish group in relation to transitional safeguarding to clarify those processes for when children are moving to age 18 and beyond into adulthood, and that encompasses those MACE processes as well as all safeguarding processes. Through Be Aware and our promotion of National Awareness Days, the partnership has communicated a clear outline of our partnership approach to tackling exploitation, and we know now that the social media and the awareness raising campaigns really make a difference. So for example, when we do like an e-bulletin takeover, or we start to kind of up our social media presence, our site hits for Be Aware tend to double because it's just kind of bringing people to the site to get a little bit more information about what's going on. I've already mentioned about the police uplift, but this has had a real significant impact in partnership working and disruption. So again, if you don't know who your kind of exploitation officers are in your area, please get in touch or email and we can make sure that you know, so you kind of have that awareness. And as always, we're always interested in what more we can do, you know, how can we kind of raise that awareness of the places and spaces that young people are spending their time, which has been built into the strategy moving forwards. And finally, priority 4 was utilise research, innovation and quality assurance to strengthen practice. So in spring last year, we held a multi-agency exploitation audit in North Yorkshire, and the findings from the audit showed really positive processes in place for supporting young people once they'd been identified, and strong and positive partnership working. It highlighted the need for further work, perhaps around identifying the signs of exploitation earlier and recognising the softer and more subtle indicators as possible signs and being aware that this could be exploitation. And we've worked really hard to start to incorporate this into some of our training that we've been sharing with partners. In last year, again, we were approached by the National Working Group in relation to our MACE processes. They came and sat in some of our MACE meetings and shared some feedback about the partnership working that was taking place. I've got a little bit more on that on a slide later on. Lots of work has been done in developing the MACE data set and using this data to drive actions both strategically and operationally. And we use that data to further drive quality assurance through the operational group. Tackling child exploitation practice principles we will get onto in a later slide, but lots of partnership work has been done over the last year, 18 months, looking at these practice principles and how we can embed them into our new strategy. And then also, since the last strategy review, we did have an independent review of our MACE processes. So there was a couple of actions moving forwards from this, particularly around a push for more around intelligence sharing and development sessions, having a clearer perpetrator process, which we've implemented as part of that review. Part of the work was from the independent review was a virtual evaluation from our MACE partners as well, and they fed back that they wanted to have some time face to face, which is what we did in June 2023. They were amazing days. I think the partners that came out got a lot out of them. So again, look out for those dates that are taking place this year as well, and we can hopefully have some more successful face to face sessions. So I just wanted to show you this slide to kind of give you an understanding of the scope of some of the work that goes on by partners across North Yorkshire as part of our MACE strategy, really. So let's just look at some of these stats, and just bear in mind these are only from March 2020. But in terms of how many level 2 virtual meetings we've had since March 2020, we've had around 350. So think about that, that's 1 in every 7 locality area roughly every month. Those have been attended by approximately 6,000 partners. And again, you can see on the word cloud just in the background, these are all the different agencies and partners that come along to those meetings, and there's many, many more as well. In terms of the perpetrators, the locations of concern and the persons of concern that have been discussed, over that time period, we've had 90 adopted perpetrators. So just think about the level of disruption work that's been put in place and the identification around those perpetrators. 420 locations of concern have been discussed, and again, disruption has been put in place to mitigate those areas. And we've had 350 persons of concern discussed. Again, think about that level of disruption and all the effort that the partners are putting into that. So in terms of mapping meetings, we've had around 65, again, since March 2020. So mapping meetings are a little bit more area specific, looking at perhaps more specific concerns that perhaps require a little bit more discussion and planning than a MACE level 2 meeting. So perhaps around a particular group of young people or a contextual space. So again, 65 of those. The NRM pilot for identifying and supporting child victims of modern slavery. Since our pilot began, where we have taken over the decision-making process, which I've already mentioned, we've had over 110 NRM referrals that have been discussed as part of that panel meeting. And then since the Be Aware relaunch in March 2022, we've had about 45,000 page hits to the Be Aware sites. That's probably quite a bit more after this week, but again, growing every day. So we're having significant impact and significant numbers that are impacted in what's going on. And just to share with you some of the feedback in regards to the value of attending our MACE Level 2 meetings and being involved in that partnership work. So people have shared with us that they find the MACE meetings invaluable, allowing them to have a really clear and proactive approach to safeguarding, seeing those current trends and feeding them back into their daily work, enabling them to develop relationships with professionals, all having the same goal in mind, and having a much better understanding of what's going on in the area and who they can turn to if they've got concerns. And it helps them build the bigger picture of what's going on locally. I've touched on this already, but in 2023, we were approached by the National Working Group. Now, National Working Group is a charitable organisation in the UK, formed of a network of over 14,000, 15,000 practitioners for sharing information and best practice in relation to tackling child exploitation. Now, they approached us and asked to come along and observe some of our practice, particularly around our partnership working in our MACE Level 2 meetings. And they wanted to look at the processes that we were working with and how effective our partnership working was. And again, I've just put on this slide, this was some of the feedback they shared with us. So they said that the meetings and the processes that we had in place provided a safe space for everyone to share ideas, to think outside the box. There was strong multi-agency representation, lots of partnership participation and contribution. There were solution-focused, creative and flexible ways of working. And the one that sticks with me, and I hope sticks with you at the end of this meeting, is this one, you know, where they shared a very positive commitment to children really shone through. And I've shared this with MACE partners, and I'll continue to share with it, because every time I go into a meeting, I see exactly the same thing. And we've got Gemma on the call as well, so if anyone has any questions about the MACE Level 2 meetings or wants to kind of link in, I'm sure Gemma will pop her email in the chat, and we can kind of look at making some communications afterwards. Be Aware, I've said many times so far, has and continues to receive positive feedback from partners, parents, carers and young people. And here are a snapshot of just some of the comments we have received. We do continue to link in with young people's groups, and we seek feedback about the website and its use regularly. Young people have shared with us they really appreciate the website and the help features, so they know where they can go and what the local offers of help are. They like the visuals, they like the simplicity of the content, and that it can be used on a laptop or a phone, so it's compatible with both. But again, some of that feedback, it's informative without being overpowering, extremely helpful to signpost parents to. We've got a parent saying it's fantastic, you know, really encouraged to watch the videos and the different tips. People saying it's an extremely valuable go-to resource. And then someone shared as well, like safeguarding content can sometimes feel dark and a little bit off-putting. The Be Aware content isn't, although it doesn't shy away from the hard topics. So now let's move on to kind of the development of the new strategy, and where we are now, and the consultation work, the lengthy consultation work that's taken place with partners. So as I've said, in June last year, we had MACE partnerships holding a series of face-to-face development sessions. The meetings were an opportunity not only to develop those strong partnership links and have really meaningful conversations about locality themes and trends in relation to exploitation, but we used it as a chance for professionals to reflect on our strategy, to look at what we had achieved, but also where we felt more work needed to be done and what our strategic priorities needed to be as we move forward into the development of our new strategy. This insight from frontline practitioners has been pivotal in the development of what we've put together. In November 2023, The operational group for MACE met and spent some time reflecting as a partnership on the Tackling Child Exploitation multi-agency principles for responding to child exploitation and extrafamilial harm. Now, these principles are designed to support effective partnership working across different local contents, and by providing a common language and a framework, it enables the group to identify areas of strength and areas for potential focus in the development of the new strategy. So we had 15 operational partners who completed the reflection exercise from, right across the range: North Yorkshire Police, Children and Family Service, Health Services, our commission services. And again, we reflected on areas of strength and focus and used this work to look at our strategic priorities moving forwards. So just to kind of give you a little bit of a break from hearing my voice for a moment, I'm just going to share with you a short video that just goes over the Tackling Child Exploitation practice principles, and hopefully will give you an insight into how valuable they are and how you will then see how we've embedded them into the strategy.
Any child or young person can experience child exploitation or extrafamilial harm, and many do without our knowledge. The complexities and presentation of child exploitation and extrafamilial harm can mean children and young people facing these harms are sometimes held responsible for what they experience, including being criminalised. This presents what can sometimes feel like an overwhelming set of challenges for professionals trying to respond to child exploitation and/or extrafamilial harm. No one set of local circumstances are the same as the next, and there isn't a single answer for what to do to tackle child exploitation or extrafamilial harm. The practice principles do not offer a detailed map for every individual situation. Instead, the principles offer a compass to help guide local ways of working, with a focus on the professional behaviours that can support an effective multi-agency response.
There are 8 evidence-informed, interrelated and interdependent practice principles. They all apply to direct work with children, young people and their parents and carers, to operational management and to strategic leadership across different agencies. The first practice principle asks you to keep the child or young person in focus when making decisions about their lives, working in partnership with them and their families to see the child or young person holistically and to be curious about all aspects of a child or young person's life. This will necessarily include offering early help, specialist support, and remembering that neither trauma nor young people's development stops at the age of 18, so those facing exploitation and/or extrafamilial harm may need support into adulthood. Understanding the needs and vulnerabilities that might be underpinning harmful behaviours towards others is also important.
I feel understood, believed and treated like a human being. I feel my worker is interested in me and on my side. I know they don't judge or blame me.
The second practice principle asks you to recognise and challenge the different forms of discrimination children, young people and their parents or carers can face. Inequality and marginalisation can be both a driver for and a consequence of exploitation and extrafamilial harm, and professional efforts can inadvertently reinforce inequity. Addressing this requires creating an inclusive culture for both professionals and those they support, in which all identities are respected and diversity is celebrated. It requires those who do not face discrimination to ensure that marginalised voices are heard and injustice is not tolerated.
I am seen, respected and accepted for who I am. Professionals can relate to me, and they challenge any discrimination I face.
The third practice principle asks you to listen to, hear and respond to what children and young people are communicating, however they are able to. Respecting what children and young people say about matters that affect them and decisions made about them helps build trusting relationships, and helps professionals to better engage with children and young people. This in turn can increase their safety. Participation is a core part of protection. Exercising control and choice is a powerful and practical way of inverting the coercion and manipulation associated with child exploitation and some forms of extrafamilial harm. Children and young people's voices should be heard at all levels of safeguarding systems to influence strategic activity as well as their individual plans.
I feel heard, acknowledged, and validated because of my views and opinions, and they're sought out and included. This matters to me, and it makes me want to talk to them.
The fourth practice principle asks you to understand and use the positive power of strengths and relationships to support growth and change. Strengths-based and relationship-based approaches can help to ensure that safeguarding activity moves beyond a focus on risk and behaviours to include building meaningful connections with children and young people and those who care about them, and seeing the strengths they bring. This can allow a better understanding of their lives and so enhance their protection, safety and resilience.
I have someone to go to who genuinely cares about me and my future. They do things to help me, and I feel safe with them and can trust them.
The fifth practice principle asks you to understand how trauma impacts on development and behaviour, and how individuals perceive and respond to threats and support. 3 different levels of trauma are important to think about. 1. The direct trauma children and young people, and potentially their parents, carers, wider family and social networks have experienced, both from child exploitation and/or extrafamilial harm, and potentially from the professional response to those harms. 2. Trauma that can impact individuals and wider communities stemming from shared experience, such as serious violence. 3. The vicarious or secondary trauma that can impact those working to support and protect traumatised individuals, often in distressing circumstances.
People understand how I've been affected by what happened to me, and they show that in the way that they help me. I feel like I matter.
The sixth practice principle asks you to respond to the complexity of child exploitation and extrafamilial harm with curiosity, critical thinking and analysis skills, a commitment to reflection and learning, and the thoughtful use of evidence at all levels of the system. Across all levels within a partnership, pace needs to be balanced with purpose in asking what you think you know, what you do know, how you know it, and what you might be missing. This will help to build an accurate picture of how child exploitation and extrafamilial harm looks in a local area, to understand what is happening in a child or young person's life, and to keep up to date with evolving knowledge and research.
I feel properly seen because the people who are there to help me put in the effort to understand me and my life, they are knowledgeable and are always learning about how to make me feel safer.
The seventh practice principle asks you to approach parents and carers as partners wherever possible, recognising the importance of caring networks to children and young people. Circumstances will differ between families, so there is no one-size-fits-all solution. This requires professionals at all levels to recognise the care, protection and support parents and carers bring. It means seeing parents and carers as an asset, respecting their contribution and being sensitive to the distress they are likely to be experiencing.
I am included in decisions about involving my parents and carers. Supporting my parents and carers to understand what has happened to me can help improve family relationships and the support I receive.
The eighth practice principle asks you to pay attention to the spaces and places where children and young people spend their time, the potential for harms that can exist there, and the actions that can be taken to mediate and address these. Attending to places and spaces allows response to move beyond individualised interventions to consider wider patterns of harm and risk, wider cohorts who might be affected and the ways in which this might be prevented and addressed. This requires effective collaboration between partners, including communities, local businesses, stewards of public spaces, the nighttime economy and others.
In my community, I have opportunities to do activities and make new friends. The space and places where I spend my time feel safe and give me a sense of belonging.
Taken together, the principles can guide useful partnership behaviours to help support a coherent, collaborative and creative local response to child exploitation and extrafamilial harm. No one principle on its own can deliver the sustainable change needed, but there may be a particular practice principle that you choose to focus on initially, either at a strategic level within your partnership to help build relationships, or individually to unlock an approach for a particular child or young person. Whichever principle sparks initial insight, this can provide an opportunity to reflect on how other principles interconnect and are reflected in the local response. The value lies in considering the principles as a holistic approach to children and young people's psychological, relational and physical well-being and safety, in which all agencies and professionals have a role.
Okay, so moving on from the work of the Tackling Child Exploitation Practice Principles, I just wanted to give you a little bit more of an update on some of the consultation work. So central to the development of this strategy has been listening to the voices and opinions of young people and how they want us as a partnership to tackle exploitation across North Yorkshire. The partnership have developed strong links with the North Yorkshire Police Fire and Crime Commissioner Youth Forum, and they played an active role in the development of the Be Aware Knowledge Hub. And we listened with intent to the work of their big conversation and their ongoing work around the big conversation. Now, the big conversation workshops are peer-led and target young people between the ages of 10 and 25 to hear their views on topics that are important to them. The Commission have 6 priorities as part of this big conversation, and many of which overlap into the world of keeping children safe from exploitation. So we've listened and we've built their work into the strategy. The Youth Forum have also seen copies of the strategic priorities and have shared really positive feedback of the work that we are planning to do. We've also taken into account the work of the Growing Up in North Yorkshire survey. So the last survey completed in 2022 had roughly 17,000 participate in the school survey. And it particularly highlighted the need to respond to increasing risks of children being online and online safety. So, for example, one of the statistics out of that big conversation was the Year 2 students, so roughly around sort of 6, 7, 8, 21% saying they have friends online that they don't know. So that has a big overlap when you're looking at the world of online exploitation as well. Another piece of work that's recently been completed with a youth council group in North Yorkshire who were really keen to support the development of the strategy. They've looked at the strategic priorities and what they mean for them as young people, and have looked at changing the wording to move away from some of that professional jargon to build something in a language that resonates more with them, which I'll share with you a little bit later on. And now on to the strategy. So this is where we are for 2024 to 2027. And I'm going to start with our strategic vision. Now, partners felt that the vision from the previous strategy still heavily encompassed how we wanted to tackle child exploitation. So moving forwards, we only really made minor amendments, primarily encapsulating young people who are being exploited rather than just those who are vulnerable to exploitation, which was stated in the last vision. So our vision is we've got all children in North Yorkshire who are being exploited and are vulnerable to exploitation and abuse are effectively identified and protected by services which are delivered in a coordinated and informed way that consistently responds to the harms and risks and improves the outcome for our children, their families and the wider community. And you can see on there, I've just put a little snip of the front cover of our new strategy. Those of you who hear myself or Gemma speak around partnership work and tackling child exploitation, we use the jigsaw analogy a lot. We talk about partners bringing their own piece of the jigsaw to this partnership working and the disruption that takes place. So we felt that was a really apt front cover image for the strategy. So now the important bit, and we're going to spend a little bit of time looking at the 4 key priorities for the strategy, which are built around prepare, prevent, protect and pursue, or the 4 Ps. For each priority, we have a series of commitments. So as we go through each one in turn, I would like you to consider and add a couple of thoughts or something into the chat bar about what this priority means for you and your job role, what you could do to implement this priority, or maybe any support that you would need to implement the priority. So let's start with prepare. So prepare the partnership and wider community in understanding the scope and complexity of child exploitation and risk outside the home. So when we look at these commitments around this priority, we want to develop and enable an informed workforce through multi-agency training and the continued sharing of emerging themes and trends across the partnership. We want to create opportunities to share learning and expertise across the partnership, utilising the voices and views of children and young people and parents and carers, so we continue to learn what works in keeping children safe from exploitation. We want to use data to continue to develop our understanding of the nature and scale of exploitation in North Yorkshire and the impact the partnership response has on those children who are being exploited or are at risk of exploitation, and use that understanding to better inform our responses to tackling it. And again, the use of that cross-partnership data set to look for patterns of disproportionality and under or over representation, and invite challenge from across the partnership to create that greater equality. So over to you guys. This is our first strategic priority around prepare. So please just have a moment or two just to consider and add something into the chat. You know, think about, you know, do you know what exploitation is? Do your teammates, do your colleagues, do the people in your communities know? Do you know the signs of what exploitation may be happening? Where to go for support and information? Do you know about the emerging themes and trends, or if you don't, how can you find them out? So just have a think. If you've got any thoughts, please pop them in the chat and then we can have a look and move on to the next one. Anything coming through on the chat? Gemma, can you see anything?
There's nothing coming through as yet, but I'll keep an eye. We've got one from Joanna. Signpost to yourselves to exploitation training delivered by NYSCP.
Super, thank you. Keep, as I'm going through these, because I'm conscious of time and I want to get you out for 1 o'clock, just pop thoughts and ideas into the chat as we go along. They're really appreciated from us in terms of how we can develop this moving forwards.
And just one last one that's just popped in, keeping it on people's minds and obviously keeping it in the forefront of people's minds as well.
Absolutely. So as we move on to prevent, so prevent is around committing to a whole partnership and wider community approach to prevention, contextual safeguarding and keeping children safe from exploitation. So again, when we look at these commitments, we want to support communities to become resilient and knowledgeable to the risks of harm outside the home, and really empower communities to have a role in making spaces and places safer. We want to raise awareness around disruption and prevention and place it not solely on the individual victim, but also around the perpetrator and the contextual spaces where exploitation is happening. We want to increase awareness of online contextual spaces and where young people are spending their time online and the associated risks with exploitation. We want to look at some horizon scanning to identify national, regional and local emerging trends, policy and practice, and make sure that learning is shared across the partnership. And again, empowering children, young people and parents and carers to have a consideration and a considered understanding of the risks of exploitation on and offline and ways to keep safe. So again, any comments that are coming through on the chat, can you read them out for me, Gemma, because I'm juggling screens.
Yeah, of course, we've had a few extra ones from the previous slide. Obviously information that people can share with parents. We've got one from Louise Davies from the Harrogate District Trust about information sharing amongst the hospitals through training and an information bulletin. Something that Carla's raised that might already exist, but a list of emails and contact numbers that we can print out and have as a quick to go. Obviously, we do have our MACE sort of, what's the word?
Like a directory.
A directory, that's the word I'm looking for, sorry. And obviously, if we can make that more accessible, obviously that's something that we can take on board and look to try and address outside the meeting. But anything extra that comes through, obviously make sure that we read all the comments and we'll look to address them as we can moving forward.
Okay, brilliant. So things to think about for Prevent. Again, you know, ask yourself these questions. Are you supporting communities to be knowledgeable about exploitation concerns? Are you aware of what disruption can look like and what your role as a partner is in that disruption? Are you aware of how to access that kind of local and national emerging trends? And are you actively listening to the voices of young people and parents and carers and their experiences? And if you're picking up emerging themes and trends, are you sharing them back into the partnership? So again, a few things to consider. Moving on to our third priority, which is to protect. So protect and support children at risk of or experiencing exploitation that does not label or blame them for the abuse they are experiencing. So when we look at commitments here, we really want partners to commit to see victims of exploitation as children first and prioritise their safety and well-being, and really focus on children and their families not being blamed for the harm that they're facing. We want partners to adopt a consistent, collaborative and trauma-informed approach to assessment of risk and commit to multi-agency planning to protect victims from harm. And continue to develop an understanding of transitional safeguarding and develop a coherent approach to support young people affected through those transitions. So when we're talking about transitions, yes, we are talking about young people as they move into adulthood, but another key area of transition there is when we've got young people moving from primary to secondary school as well. We want to support agencies across the partnership to effectively manage the tension where we've got children and young people who are both victims of harm and exploitation and harming other young people as part of this abuse, and understanding that in these situations young people should be seen as victims first and the safeguarding response prioritised. For partners to understand the nature of peer networks, again, on and offline, and around the victims and the roles that they can play in children and young people experiencing exploitation, and support parents, carers and family networks to understand what's happening to the child, working with them to ensure that they can best meet the child's needs and play an active part in the solutions and processes to help create safety for that child. And where exploitation is a known factor for out of authority children placed in North Yorkshire, effective information sharing is in place through our MACE arrangements. So again, lots to think about for Protect, but have these considerations. You know, are you aware that all young people who are exploited are victims and should be treated as such? Do you know about the language to use when talking about victims of exploitation? Do you know where our language guides are that can support you with that? Do you know about those risks around those transitional periods in a child's life? Are you actively seeking for ways that parents and wider networks around a child can be involved in supporting the partnership working that's going on? And are you aware of those cross-border links and those processes around sharing concerns? So anything that's popped up into the chat on that one?
We've just had a couple of sort of potentials of extra sessions or training within nursery settings. I've put my email in the chat. Please get in touch. We'll look to see what your requirements would be, and obviously with our capacity we'll always try and facilitate anything. Obviously we've got all of our recordings on the YouTube channel that Kat's probably already mentioned, and they're free to everybody. Could they be used in any training sessions that you've got within your establishments? Ensuring information's easily accessible for parents and children, not just professionals. Again, we've got that on the Be Aware site that's for parents, carers and also young people themselves as well. So yeah, there's loads of information that's available to young people. And again, if there's anything missing that you think we can help with, please feel free to get in touch. If we don't know the answer, we might know somebody else who does, who we can put you in touch with.
Super, thank you. And then finally, our last strategic priority is around pursue. So we're looking here actively pursuing and disrupt and respond to perpetrators of exploitation and work collectively as a partnership to disrupt the exploitation of children in the contextual spaces where they are spending their time. So again, the commitments, we're looking at perpetrators and unsafe spaces. So again, really consider both online and offline, and that partnership identification quickly and appropriate enforcement action taken. There's a multi-agency community safety approach that uses local intelligence to identify perpetrators, persons of concern and locations of concern that disrupts exploitation collaboratively using a wide range of partnership methods. Gemma and Zoe did an amazing session yesterday, I think it was, looking at disruption and everybody's roles in partnership disruption. So I would really recommend you catch that when I pop it on our YouTube channel later on in the week. Our MACE level 2 meetings, we want those to be characterised by an ongoing and wider partnership attendance, you know, good information sharing, clear accountability of multi-agency problem solving around disruption and clear recording of outcomes. Effective governance arrangements around the identification and management of perpetrators, and where children are being exploited through county lines or organised criminality, again, quickly identified and safeguarded as a victim first, and clear disruption activity is undertaken for those responsible for exploiting them. So again, lots of things to think about, primarily around the sharing of intelligence. Do you know around kind of the partnership information sharing and how you can share that intelligence with police through the online portal? If you don't know, have a look on our website. We've got loads of guides. And again, if there's any barriers to kind of submitting that intelligence, if you think, oh, I'm not sure, maybe I don't think I've got consent, I don't think I can share it, please let us know what those barriers are. We've put a guide together with frequently asked questions, but you know, the share of your intelligence is such a key one for us. So I'll just move on. I'm conscious of time. And I just wanted to kind of share with you, we've got an additional page on the strategy that looks at our outcomes. So we've got really clear indicators for measuring progress, and we will seek assurance of this through our operational and strategic groups. So in terms of what next, we've launched the strategy to coincide with Child Exploitation Awareness Day, which was on Monday. Again, we've done loads of work with raising awareness as part of that day, which we were greedy and we extended to a week. Partners, we had an amazing partnership uptake in terms of the delivery of these sessions that are on through the week, and we've had a menu right through the week of about 10 sessions with about 350 partners signed up to attend. We've got some coming up at the end of the week that really, you know, there'll be such a shame to miss out on, because there's going to be some amazing learning opportunities. As an operational group, we will look to build on the strategy and develop guides and resources around what the priorities and the commitments mean for different roles. And we'll use the comments that you've shared in the chat as to support with that piece of work as well. Including in that, we will be looking at an ongoing piece of work with the Youth Council to look at a graphic piece around what the priorities mean to them. And of course, we'll go back to our MACE partners. We'll use that face-to-face development session every year to really kind of look at our progress in the strategy and how we're moving forward. So please book onto those if you haven't already done so. I will get on to a few Be Aware updates as well on a slide coming up. Now, this was just, I wanted to share with you this. I've put this slide together, but I'm hoping we've got the young people that will put us a much better graphic than I can ever do. But this is the work that the young people did around those strategic priorities. So think about the wording that's on our current strategy. They've really stripped it back. They've taken away the professional jargon and they've rewritten the priorities in their own words. So their vision, they've changed around, say everyone in North Yorkshire who's being exploited and who feels unsafe and put in dangerous situations can have someone safe and trustworthy to talk to, who will listen to them, not blame them, and who will work with everyone they need to help keep young people safe and to stop the exploiters. So they've taken on board our vision and they've just kind of tweaked it to think, right, but we're going to change the language to actually say that it means something to us as young people. And again, they've done the same with prepare, prevent, protect and pursue. So hopefully we can develop that into an additional resource as well. Just to keep you aware of some of the updates to be aware, obviously we've put the new strategy on now for you, and we've added some new resources and information on financial exploitation and sexually coerced extortion. There is a blog post on the front page of the website which goes into a lot more detail of what I've added. We've got 2 amazing sessions being held by the Children's Society this week. The first is at 4 o'clock today. That's going to look at sexually coerced extortion, and the second is on Friday lunchtime, which is going to look at financial exploitation. Now, these sessions we're not able to record. I'll look to share some of the resources, but I would encourage you to book on, because the Children's Society have done some amazing work around these 2 forms of exploitation and really kind of bringing into light what it looks like. I've added some new resources to the PSHE section, which is right down at the bottom of the front page of Be Aware. So again, you can look at some new resources there. That's all just drawn from national work. And hopefully you're all aware now of the changes to the online intelligence police portal. But again, we've got that on Be Aware, and I've mentioned the frequently asked questions document and guide, which you can print out and put in your staff rooms or up on your wall, to just kind of make partners aware around what it is. And then finally, keep a lookout, because what I will try and do by the end of the week is collate all the learning and the resources from this week onto Be Aware, so you can access them. The ones that we have recorded or we've been able to record, I will pop on our YouTube channel as well. Child Exploitation Awareness Day, you can still get involved. I know it was Monday, but we've got a whole week of social media promotion that we're doing. So please follow us at NYSCP on like X, Instagram, Facebook and things like that. And then they're just up there. You can like and share them, and then they go out across your social media channels as well. And keep promoting the learning resources, the sessions that are on for the rest of the week. Let's get as many people in and learning as possible. Promote Be Aware. We've got posters and things. So again, if you want to access those, get in touch and we can get some sent out to you. So that's how you can get involved. And then finally, if you want to find out more, a couple of QRs for you to scan. First, we'll take you to Be Aware homepage, where you'll get loads of information. And the second is the Child Exploitation Awareness Day campaign page. So that's got all the training links for this week. And we've also got the training links for the June face-to-face sessions as well. So you can click on there to get booked on. This is what we've got coming up for the rest of the week. So as I've said, we've got that online sexually coerced extortion at 4 o'clock today. And then on Thursday, we've got Bernardo's Independent Child Trafficking Guardianship Service, who are going to be talking through their work. And we've got the Your Sexual Health Service talking about sexual exploitation and sexual health support. And then finally, on that last session on Friday, we'll be looking at financial exploitation as well. That is it from me and my presentation. Thank you for taking the time to kind of listen to me talk about our strategy. This is your strategy. We want it to work for you as partners. So please do share with us any comments or any thoughts or any questions. I'm going to stop the recording now, but I'm happy to stick around for a few minutes if anyone's got anything that they want to share.